On this edition of City Profile, we'll be talking with a former and a current city commissioner, and they're both the same person. Stay with us. Hello and welcome to City Profile. I'm Tom Butler, and on today's show, I have one of my good friends, Gerald Watkins, current city commissioner, former city commissioner, former state representative, so you got a lot of titles.
Current one is Flunky.
Flunky, I like that one.
Soon be grandfather though, but it's an honor to be with you. I think the world of you and worked with you many years, and glad to be on the show with you.
All right, so let's talk about a little bit about the past. I introduced you as a former state representative, and talking before the show, and I've followed your career since you were a former city commissioner, and you went up to the big house in Frankfort and were a state representative, and then you're not, and you didn't get beat in an election. You decided you wouldn't do it anymore, and I think people would like to know why.
Well, good question, and I'm grateful to the people in Paducah and Western Kentucky, McCracken County, for giving me an opportunity. One of the highlights of my life, and certainly a great honor to serve in public service at any level. And so I got elected in '06 to the Paducah City Commission, served 3 terms, and I'd always wanted to serve in the State House of Representatives since I was in my 20s, actually, because I'd always loved those issues, education, crime and punishment, things of that nature. And so I got an opportunity in 2012 and got elected and served 3 terms, and was blessed to win good margins, and I had 7 bills passed into law. And I decided I wanted to come back home, and a lot of people didn't understand, but you can do a lot at the local level. And the reason I didn't seek re-election to the State House, again, it's one of the highlights of my life, and I'd always wanted to for so many years, but from Paducah to Frankfort is a 4-hour drive, and it just beats your body up each way, 4 hours. And so in addition to the drive, being on the road so much, you're spending almost 3.5 months of your life every year living out of a hotel room. And once I felt like I had done about all I could do that I'd wanted to try to do, then I felt like it was time to come back home, mostly for those reasons. But for people who didn't understand, you can do an awful lot at the local level, particularly in the area of job creation and expanding educational opportunities that you can't do in Frankfort. I think local elected officials outside of the governor of Kentucky have the most important role in creating jobs for the people in their city or jurisdiction. And so you can do an awful lot at the local level. When I was on the city commission before, it was my compromise. A lot of people worked very hard on it, but we voted and landed the Murray State University 2+2. I led the debate on it, and we created the community scholarship for students who can go free for the first 2 years. And we created and/or retained over 1,100 jobs with $94 million in private investment in those previous 6 years. So, and I felt like we needed some greater efforts and emphasis and more aggressiveness in the area of job creation here. And that was part of the equation too, and part of the reason I wanted to come home. So both are great positions. I was honored to be elected and be able to serve in both capacities, but I'm just glad to be back home.
Well, and we're glad you are.
Well, thank you.
Well, let me piggyback off of that just a little bit. Whenever I hear politicians speak, one of their issues is almost always job creation. And I wonder, what can you do in your position? And you're saying that you do have some power as a local elected official to enhance our community. What are some of the things that you can do as a city commissioner to help bring jobs in?
Actually, there is a lot that a person can do at the local level. Outside of the governor of Kentucky, it is the local officials who will have more to do with bringing in jobs and creating jobs than anyone at any other level. And the highest priority of government at all three levels is the safety and security of our citizens. But right after that is job creation. And this community is starved for jobs. In the last 4 years, we've only landed one new company in 2015 with 25 jobs, lost one after that with 90 jobs. So we've had a net loss of 65 jobs in the last 4 years. And I get phone calls all the time, and so many people who would like to stay here, they're forced to leave because there's no job opportunities. So local officials have to be aggressive. You have to go out and recruit. And when you get an opportunity for someone to come, you've got to offer incentives. I always took the position, look, I'll trade about anything for a job as long as it makes economic sense. You've got to do that because everybody else is going to. And if you don't, which we haven't been doing for the last 4 years, you're not going to land the job opportunities. So what I'm trying to do right now is work closely with Greater Paducah Economic Development to make sure we have in place an aggressive president who can sell themselves and the community and help us to get out and work hard and bring in some job opportunities. And right now the economy is hot, it's growing, unemployment rate is low, and so now is the time to get out and make that happen. And so we've just got to do that. So that was one of the reasons I decided to run for the Paducah City Commission rather than run for the State House again, is I just wanted to work hard to try to help bring some job opportunities to the Paducah area, and you can do it. And so that's kind of my emphasis, and the highest priority right now is to just try to make our community more receptive, more business friendly, and our officials more aggressive in going out and recruiting and then offering the incentives that they're going to demand to create some jobs. And we just barely lost a 400 job steel plant, average wage of $72,000 a year. If we'd had more land at one of the parks, we could have landed it. So there are opportunities like that, and there are more coming our way, and so we need to be ready and prepared and be aggressive and vote to support those opportunities when they come.
You mentioned Greater Paducah Economic Development. It used to be GPEDC. I don't know if they've dropped the C or not, but anyway, as a layman in the community, not really familiar with what that organization does, I would like to know, what they do, and if you're going to pay somebody a bunch of money to bring jobs to Paducah, is there a benchmark that they have to meet? Do they have to bring so many jobs in, and if they don't, what happens?
Well, it's an economic development arm of the community. It was created years ago. It's partially funded by the city, by McCracken County, and through private donations. And the president, that's what they're charged with. It's a full-time position. It's a good paying position. And they're charged with getting out and going across this country and going to seminars and things and just recruiting. You need to, you don't really have a certain benchmark that you got to have X number of jobs by a certain date, but if you don't bring jobs in, you're not going to stay very long. And the person who takes the job or has that job has got to be very aggressive. They got to work hard. Previous president that we had a goal of visiting 100 companies every year, and he did, and landed 1,100 jobs. So you've got to get out and work. It's very competitive. Everybody is doing the same thing. We all want those companies. Maybe New York City doesn't, but everybody else does.
Right.
And so it's very competitive, and you've got to produce. But the more jobs, the better. But there's really not a benchmark that you've got to have X number of jobs by a certain date, or you don't keep your job. But if you're not productive, then certainly it's time to maybe look elsewhere.
Another perception that I've heard that I think, I don't know if it's true or not, so you can tell me, is that Paducah's just not growing as fast as cities and towns of similar size. And that seems to be anecdotally the case. I look around at Clarksville, and I look around at Jackson, Tennessee, and places like that. And since I'm an old guy, I know they were about the same size when I was younger, and they've grown, and it doesn't seem like we have. Is that a true perception? And if so, why?
It's absolutely true. Paducah used to be the 5th largest city in Kentucky. Now we're the 17th largest and sliding. And in addition to the cities you just missed, Owensboro, certainly Bowling Green, Elizabethtown, Hopkinsville are all growing very rapidly. Elizabethtown, which really has nothing on us, they're landlocked. We have a river, they don't. And in 2015, they had the largest percentage per capita job creation in the entire country, with 173 new businesses opened up. So new business per capita in Elizabethtown, Kentucky. That same year we had 1. And so they're all growing. Now Bowling Green, Clarksville has some advantages being closer to Nashville. But communities, according to the literature, that are growing are on an interstate. They have a 4-year university. They have moderate climate. And Paducah has all those. We have several interstates running through here. We have 4 rivers that converge right in here. We have rail. We have water. We have an airport. We have everything. But we have had opportunities in years past. Many years past, particularly, and basically the number one problem, I think, was a lack of aggressive leadership. Some of the leaders at the time didn't want Paducah to grow. They liked it just like it was, and that's a shame because we missed out on some really good opportunities throughout the years. But for the last number of years, other than the last 4 years, I know that Paducah has been very aggressive in trying to bring some businesses in, but it has just gotten so competitive that it's very difficult. And again, if you're not willing to offer incentives, they're not going to come. So the perception is true, and we need to reverse that, and we need to work hard and let people know we're open for business. We need to pass laws that make Paducah more attractive. Kentucky needs a more attractive tax code. When I was on the City Commission before, we cut property taxes by 10% to try to encourage people to move into Paducah. But unfortunately, the school board raised those property taxes for within a month. And the last 3 times the City Commission cut property taxes, the local school board raised property taxes at the same rate that the City Commission cut them. So all we did was shift money from the City Commission to the school board, and the property taxes didn't get property owners didn't get any relief. So we need to do things like that to try to make Paducah more attractive.
One of the things that pops into my mind, and since you are an encyclopedia of information about politics in Kentucky, our mayor is a part-time position. Do other communities have full-time mayors? And if they do, is their role different in economic development than ours in Paducah?
Paducah has a city manager type government, and even in Kentucky, you know, there are a number of communities that have the same type government that we have, and then there are those that have a strong mayor, and you have a full-time mayor. I don't know that one format would be any more attractive than another as far as getting things done. It's more who occupies the positions. In Paducah, you have a part-time mayor and you have a city manager full-time who actually runs the day-to-day operation. So the mayor and the commission, we set policy, and then we're hands-off. Basically, we let the city manager run the city. But I would say that the city of Paducah we're shifting some positions around, and after several of them went to South Carolina to see what they were doing that we weren't doing, and so we're going to have more positions whose central focus is economic development. And so you'll have more people working with GPED to try to keep the businesses, keep the jobs that we have, to make sure everybody's happy, and what can we do to make it easier to do business in Paducah. And so you know, we're trying to make a greater emphasis in that area.
You talked about really two of any city's priorities: safety and security and economic development. talk a little bit more about the vision that you have for, I won't say an ideal Paducah, no city is going to be ideal, but what would it look like if you had plenty of money and could have what you think we need?
Well, good question, and certainly we're going to work really hard in the area of job creation, and certainly the safety and security of Paducah citizens' residents is the top priority. But one area that we really need to address, and that's the lack of a first-class recreational complex. And that's one of the reasons Elizabethtown is beating our socks off. They have a new $21 million, relatively new $21 million first-class recreational complex. I've toured it, talked to the manager, and it's a beautiful facility. And one of the biggest complaints I've always heard for years about Paducah is the traveling ball teams, softball, baseball, they don't want to come to Paducah because of the condition of our facilities. And it's softball, baseball, soccer. It's a multi-million-dollar tourism industry. And people don't want to come to Paducah and McCracken County, and I can understand why, because our facilities are so inferior. And we also need an Olympic-size aquatic pool for Paducah swim team and for the public. If we're going to compete, we've got to be an attractive destination. If we're going to bring companies in here, they look at the quality of life for their employees. And if we don't have the facilities to offer their employees, they're not interested in coming to Paducah. And so we desperately need, that's part of, people are more into health today than they were in years past, and people want to work out, they want to exercise. That's important for a lot of people, and you need a first-class recreational complex. We have hundreds of young people and adults who play baseball, softball, soccer, swim, and I've always been partial to an ice skating rink, but we need to have some facilities that will make Paducah more attractive, give people who live here a better quality of life, who will help bring in those millions of dollars each year spent in the tourism recreational industry. And that's one component that we are sorely lacking in, that we really need. So my goal, and the commission, we're all on board. We're looking very seriously right now at moving forward with a first-class recreational complex so that we can improve the quality of life for the residents of Paducah.
Well, and then the question is, and how do you pay for it?
Well, yeah, that's the problem. But we are looking for money, and we're looking for ways to fund it. And we've got some private money donations that we're lining up that are rather substantial. We really need, the General Assembly needs to pass the local option sales tax. It's the most democratic. It has to go through 4 different votes before you could increase anything. And you might be looking at a penny on a percentage-wise, 1% increase in perhaps a restaurant tax. People in Paducah, McCracken County, 60% of the meals are eaten out. A lot of people, and the police chief says on any given day, Monday through Friday, in Paducah, Kentucky, there's about 103,000 people in our city limits when we only have 25,000 population. So we're regional health care and retail, and so and we have great restaurants, great choices, and many communities do our size. So it wouldn't hurt anyone, but it would raise enough money. That's how Elizabethtown pays for their recreational complex. Collecting all the grants and donations from private money that we possibly can get, and then if the General Assembly would pass the local option sales tax, there's how we pay for it.
You mentioned a public-private kind of partnership. How do those work?
Well, when I was in the General Assembly, we passed legislation that allows that to happen, and so now you can have public-private partnerships where you have some public money, some private money, and people can, and the private sector could actually build and operate roads and parks and different facilities that used to be strictly funded and paid for by the public. but they have to have an incentive to be willing to do that.
Right.
And so you give them that incentive, but we have legislation in place now that would allow that. So hopefully that we can move forward in that area and create some opportunities here using that tool.
We probably have 6-7 minutes to go, and another area I'd like to explore is how important is it to you that the city and the county cooperate and kind of have similar goals and things that we need to accomplish for the good of all?
It's critical, Tom. It's just absolutely critical. I remember a former state representative many years ago complaining to the then governor of Kentucky about why Paducah never got anything. And he said, the reason you don't get anything is because I have one group come up here one week and tell me they want a certain thing, and then the next week another group from Paducah will come up and say, no, we don't want that, we want this. And the next week someone else will come up and say, no, we don't want that, here's what we want. And he said, that's the reason you don't get anything. Y'all need to get together. And so it's just absolutely critical that we're on the same page, that we work together, that we have the same goals. We're not going to have a merged government. It was 70 to 30% people in McCracken County, Paducah don't want that. But we can work together, and we are. I'm really proud. The mayor, county judge executive, I went to high school with Craig Clymer, great friend, and I like all the members of the fiscal court. We have a good city commission, we have a great fiscal court. And we're meeting once every 2 weeks, and now try to solve common problems that are mutually of interest to both of us. And we're really working together well now, probably better than at any time that I can recall in a long time. And I'm real proud of that relationship, and I think it is of utmost importance if we're going to create the jobs and provide the type of community, the quality of life, and the safety and security that people around here need, want, and desire, and put us in a position to grow. That cooperation is so important, and I'm real proud and thankful that we are working together very closely.
Another thing I'd like to talk about just briefly before we go is fairly recently the city unveiled a strategic plan. And I'm not sure if people like me understand why you develop a strategic plan and where does it take you?
Well, with each new city commission every 2 years, they have been more recent years, we had a 6-hour orientation session before we started meeting on the regular commission meetings. And we all voiced our priorities, and we looked at some work that had already been done to see if we were still interested in supporting certain projects. And so really it's kind of a plan of where do we want to go. We can't do all this stuff. What's the highest priorities? And we can't afford all of it. So it's a good outline of the possibilities of what is there out there that we really need to be concentrating on, and what's the highest priorities, and what do we want to do. And so let's once you have that plan in place, this is our goals, then it's easier to get there, because we need to do X, Y, and Z and put them in place to try to reach that goal. And so it's multifaceted in different areas of concern and interest, and so it's a worthwhile project to move us forward to try to accomplish the goals that we want.
Do y'all think about the mall much? I mean, it seems like there was a mall heydays where malls went on all over the country, kind of destroyed downtown businesses, and now it seems like malls are declining. What happens if the Kentucky Oaks Mall starts to have trouble? And I think that they already have.
And where do we go from here? That's a good question. It's scary, not just in Paducah, but nationally. On a positive note, when the mall opened up, downtown was deserted. And I mean, that's not positive, but it was deserted. There was hardly any businesses down there, no residents. And we run the risk of having an abandoned downtown. And thank goodness, with some foresight and hard work and people willing to invest their money, now downtown and lower town is the place to be. People want to move down there. Businesses are opening up, and we passed the TIF district, which makes it easier, and we can help work with private businesses who want to open up in downtown Paducah. So downtown Paducah is growing. There's a few buildings down there empty that we'd like to fill at a very reasonable rent, but downtown is thriving. Kentucky Oaks Mall, like every other mall, is taking a big hit because so many Americans are shopping online. And so you have job growth with Amazon and those type companies, but we're killing retail and eliminating hundreds of thousands of jobs across the country. And I'm partial to brick and mortar. I want to see stuff with my hands. It's easier to get what you want, try it on. And so I hate to see what's going to have to happen is the mall developers are going to have to continue to reduce their rents to make it more attractive for people to survive economically. Lower rent in an occupied mall is a lot better than a half-empty mall. And so I don't know how else to combat that other than encourage Americans to look, it's great shopping online, but we're killing our brick and mortar stores, and we're losing an awful lot of jobs because people, if you're not going to shop local and you're not going to give these local businesses and chains too your business, or at least some of it, they're going away. So I think we just have to have a balance there, and really you can't mandate that, you can't pass a law, you can only encourage people, and really the only thing the mall owner could do is just start reducing the rents.
Tough problem. I have about a minute left. I always like to give my guests an opportunity to give me a scoop. Recently found out that Commissioner Richard Abraham was going to run for mayor. You got any scoops you want to give me in the last minute?
Well, I'm just thankful to be where I'm at, and I am not running for mayor of Paducah.
Okay, just want to make sure.
And I'm not running for president of the United States, although it seems like an awful lot of other people are.
Yeah.
And so I'll probably content just to stay here in my hometown of Paducah, Kentucky, and try to work hard and do the best I can to create some job opportunities and enhance the educational opportunities and the recreational opportunities for the citizens of Paducah.
Sounds like a good answer. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Enjoyed being with you. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for joining us. This has been City Profile with City Commissioner Gerald Watkins. I'm Tom Butler. Join us again next time.